Today, however, we're fortunate to have with us Emily LaRosa, who is a PhD student at Michigan State University working on AI and trust dynamics. She focuses on multiple areas, including bioethics, socio-robotics, and agricultural ethics. But she has a special area of interest in AI and how it's used in campaigns and the ethics of its use, and in the use of in policymaking. So join me now in welcoming Emily LaRosa to the Foley Institute.
Thank you so much for that introduction. I am Emily LaRosa, and I'm from Michigan State University, and it is our tradition that we begin with a land acknowledgement. I respectfully acknowledge that Michigan State University occupies the ancestral, traditional, and contemporary lands of the Anishinaabe, Cree Fires Confederacy, Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi peoples. I acknowledge the real ways that the state of Michigan, Michigan State University, and residents of this land have benefited from the forced and systematic removal of Anishinaabe and other indigenous peoples from Michigan. I strive to be a positive and responsible steward for the lands in which I both research and reside, and am committed to an unwavering support of these indigenous communities. So here's our roadmap for today, and I'm going to try to keep this interesting and a little bit informal so that way we can have a better discussion at the end. Firstly, we'll discuss what AI is, because AI, I think, has a lot of connotations and a lot of confusion. And then we'll talk about how AI can be used in campaigning. We'll then move on to how to integrate AI, and discuss impacts on election fairness that these kinds of integrations might have. Then we'll move to how AI has been used in the past, and talk about the key dangers of this use. We'll then close with ethical considerations that I think everyone ought to have in their minds as a forefront when we move forward in thinking about how we ought to be regulating these systems. So what is AI? AI is actually a common buzzword. But what's really important to consider is that it's a class of technologies that is both a science and a technology. It takes the form of tools that create the appearance of intelligence and intelligent behavior for practical purposes by analyzing the environment in the form of data and acting with a significant degree of autonomy. AI can operate autonomously rather than statically like its automated predecessors. Automated systems are designed to have fixed contexts of operation and function, and as these technologies improve, the context may expand, but they continue to have clear responses to well-defined events and rely on the operator for success. Importantly, they're more considered as a set-it-and-forget-it machine. Think about the nest in your home. You create the parameters in which it's going to operate, but it doesn't move beyond these parameters. Autonomous systems, on the other hand, in order for them to be autonomous, must be able to identify context in a fluid environment, select and execute appropriate functions that conform to that particularly robust situation. Autonomous system performances are gauged along three metrics. Firstly, its function, what it does to achieve its goal. Its tolerance, how closely or often the technology must achieve that function. And the appropriate contexts of operation. The environments the technology is designed for, so it can achieve its function at an appropriate tolerance level. Autonomous systems are to operate with independence from human users, and they therefore assume the task of evaluating their surroundings and altering their behavior accordingly. They must identify behavior via complex inferences and via highly variable contextual features. They must also do so in very noisy and shifting environments, and identify suitable behaviors for the situation, which forward their goal without going against social norms. AI is typically an autonomous system. More complex AI systems utilize neural networks based on connectionism. These interconnected networks, based on simple units, supposedly function much more closely to how the human brain works. Cognition, as it were, emerges from the interaction between these simple processing units, called neurons, many of which are used. Machine learning, or ML, uses neural networks. These systems are called deep learning if there are multiple layers of neurons. Machine learning is a statistical process used for a variety of tasks. However, the dominant underlying task is often pattern recognition. Algorithms can take data and identify patterns, then use those patterns as guiding rules to explain the data and make future predictions on what next data will emerge. This is autonomous in the sense that it happens without direct instruction and rules given by the programmer. So why use AI? Well, the starting point is the data in machine learning. Data defines what to do next, and algorithms are trained on existing data sets. The algorithm can predict results from the new data via data mining, and ML can be supervised in that a particular variable is designated as the target for prediction by a programmer and is trained by the programmer using examples and non-examples, or unsupervised, where the categories aren't known and the algorithm makes their own clusters, perhaps seeing patterns that domain experts have yet to identify. Machine learning relies on data and statistics, and data science itself is critical. Data must be collected and prepared. Yet how to capture and clean data is rife with ethical concerns. Humans play an important role at all stages, by framing the problem that the data is intended to solve, preparing the data set the algorithm trains on, as well as that which the data will ultimately be applied to, creating and selecting the algorithm, interpreting results, and deciding what to do with said results. It is important to note that mistakes are always possible, and human choice, interpretation, and knowledge is in fact necessary. AI might find spurious correlations, and humans are needed to decide which correlations to study further to find actually causal relationships. AI is at most useful at this stage if we treat it as an autonomous data science tool rather than an arbiter of choice. So how can AI be used in campaigning? Let's go to a contemporary example. Oh dear. All right. Pardon me, everyone. Do we have volume? No. Let's go close up here.
Down on the left side of your volume. Oh, it's all the way up.
Okay. I'm so sorry, folks.
Spoke with him for an interview you'll see only on WREL. He explains why he decided to do it and why it's raising questions. You may have already seen the online ads or the mobile billboards driving around Raleigh featuring an AI-generated version of Republican gubernatorial candidate Mark Robinson.
The Affordable Care Act is an effort to enslave everybody.
Next week, it moves to TV as well, becoming the state's first fully AI-generated political ad campaign. It's the creation of Todd Stiefel, a Raleigh investor and Democratic donor who started his own super PAC, Americans for Prosperity, emphasis on the parity. It's spending about $1 million on this campaign. Most individuals don't run ads. That's true. Stiefel says he's trying to reach voters who tune out other political ads.
We are hoping to cross media silos by using humor to get to people and have them laugh and be entertained.
Stiefel wants to draw attention to some of the comments Robinson has made by using AI to recreate Robinson saying them.
And the civil rights movement was crap.
He has really said the civil rights movement is crap. He has really said and believes the Affordable Care Act is an effort to enslave people. These are really outrageous, far things.
But Amanda Sturgill wouldn't say it's ethical. She teaches journalism at Elon University and wrote a book on digital misinformation.
I think the problem really is that it can be deeply confusing to people, particularly when you're using a technology that makes it sound like it is the candidate themselves.
Oh, I totally think this is ethical, and we did it very intentionally to be very clear it is. The stuff is covered in disclaimers.
Sturgill says not everybody reads the fine print, but she says voters will need to be more careful in the near future because it's gotten so easy to make ads like this.
In the past, if you wanted to tediously sit there and go through hours of someone's speeches and cut up their words and expertly audio edit them together, you could still make people say things, but now it's basically a free app, right, that anybody can do that. So the speed at which you can create bad information is greatly increased.
Stiefel says his ad is not misinformation.
But the words are his. These are things he has said and done. And that's totally fair game to me.
We asked the Robinson campaign for comment. Spokesman Mike Lonergan replied, Stiefel's work is full of fake clips and outrageous lies typical of the smear campaign. Josh Stein and his Democratic allies are running against Mark Robinson, and North Carolina voters will see right through it. Laura Leslie, WREL News, Raleigh.
Now, we also asked the Stein campaign for a new kind of political ad is coming to a screen near you. Artificial intelligence is the newest technology one Raleigh man is using to try.
I can barely see the mouse. Alright. So, now the question is, does this capture the whole picture? Is deepfaking it? Is that the way that we're going? Is this how AI is going to affect campaigns? And is this the healthiest way and example that we have for AI being used going forward? Well, I actually argue no. There are multiple ways that AI can be used in campaigning. And it's important to be able to delineate and articulate these things so that way we can be aware of and utilize them in ways that are healthful and healthy for our democratic processes. Firstly, we have data analysis and voter segmentation through voter profiling and segmentation. AI can analyze vast amounts of data to create detailed voter profiles. This includes demographics, past voting behavior, social media activity, and even consumer behavior. And by segmenting voters into different categories based on their likelihood to vote, key issues, and demographic information, campaigns can tailor their messaging more effectively. We also have predictive analysis with election forecasting and voter turnout prediction. AI can predict election outcomes by analyzing historical data, polling data, and current trends. AI models can also predict which segments of the population are more likely to vote, allowing campaigns to focus their get out the vote efforts where they're most needed. We can also see targeted advertising with personalized messaging and ad placement optimization. AI algorithms can create personalized messages for different voter segments, ensuring that each group receives content that resonates with their specific concerns and interests. AI can also determine the best times and platforms to place ads to maximize reach and effectiveness. We see social media monitoring and engagement already on the rise, with sentiment analysis and chatbots prevalent. AI can monitor social media platforms to gauge public sentiment about candidates and key issues, allowing campaigns to adjust their strategy in real time. And AI-powered chatbots can engage with voters on social media and campaign websites, providing information, answering questions, and encouraging voter registration. We also have AI within campaign management, with resource allocation and event planning, wherein AI can optimize the allocation of campaign resources, such as volunteers, funds, and time, to areas where it can have the most significant impact. AI can also help in planning and organizing campaign events by predicting attendance and identifying the best locations and times to hold rallies and town halls. We see it presently within speech and debate preparation, with content generation and opponent analysis being on the rise as well. AI can assist in writing speeches and debate responses by analyzing past speeches, identifying key issues, and suggesting impactful rhetoric. AI can also analyze opponents' speeches and public statements to identify weaknesses and anticipate their speaking strategies. With voter outreach and mobilization, we see already, and I'm sure many of you have gotten these, automated calling and texting, where AI can manage large-scale phone banking and text message campaigns, personalizing outreach efforts to increase voter engagement, and voter registration drives, where AI can identify and target unregistered voters, providing them with information and resources to facilitate their registration. We also see it with issue identification and policy formation, with public opinion analysis being key. And AI can analyze public opinion data to identify key issues that matter to voters, helping campaigns prioritize and curate their policy proposals. And we also have policy impact simulation, wherein an AI can simulate the potential impacts of proposed policies, helping candidates to refine their platforms based on predicted outcomes. We also see this in fundraising, with donor identification and optimizing appeals. AI can identify potential donors by analyzing data on past donations, social media activity, and demographic information. AI can also tailor fundraising requests to individual donors, suggesting optimal times and methods for making that request. And lastly, we can see it in reputation monitoring and scenario mitigation. With reputation monitoring, AI can monitor news outlets and social media for negative coverage or emerging issues, allowing campaigns to respond quickly and effectively. And with scenario analysis, AI can model different crisis scenarios and suggest the best strategies for mitigation. So how would we integrate AI? That's another question. And I identified 3 quick ways that we can integrate AI. Firstly, we can integrate it through social media monitoring and sentiment analysis. So how this works is you use AI tools to track and analyze social media conversations about the candidate, opponents, and key issues. Sentiment analysis can determine whether the discussions are positive, beneficial, negative, or neutral. The benefits here are that this helps the campaign understand public opinion in real time, allowing for quick adjustments to messaging and strategy. And there are a lot of off-the-shelf AI platforms like Brandwatch or Sprout Social that offer social media monitoring and sentiment analysis features. We also have targeted advertising. This works by using AI algorithms to analyze voter data and create detailed profiles. Based on these profiles, the campaign can deliver personalized ads to different voter segments. This ensures campaign messaging is highly relevant to the audience, improving engagement and persuasion. Platforms like Facebook and Google Ads have built-in AI tools that allow for sophisticated targeting and personalization of ads based on user data. And lastly, we can see automated outreach with chatbots. We can deploy AI chatbots on social media platforms, websites, and messaging apps to interact with voters, answer their questions, and provide information about that campaign. Chatbots can engage with a large number of voters simultaneously, providing consistent and timely responses without the need for a large human team. Tools that exist are services like ManyChat, ChatFuel, and MobileMonkey that offer easy-to-use interfaces that create and manage chatbots without requiring extensive technical knowledge. So how would we implement these? Well, firstly, for social media monitoring and sentiment analysis, you sign up for a social media monitoring tool, set up keywords and phrases relevant to the campaign, and regularly review the sentiment reports and adjust campaign strategies accordingly. For targeted advertising, you gather and integrate voter data from various sources, use ad platforms' targeting features to define audience segments, and create ad content tailored to each segment and monitor performance to optimize campaigns. For automated outreach with chatbots, you would choose a chatbot platform and create a chatbot account. You then define the chatbot's conversation flows, including responses to common voter questions, and integrate the chatbot with campaign websites and social media pages, monitoring interactions to improve your chatbot's performance. So what about impacts on election fairness? We've discussed how to integrate these systems and in what ways they might actually be useful. But the question is, how does this impact fairness when we come to elections in reality? Firstly, we can have positive impacts on election fairness. We can have enhanced voter engagement. AI can be used to improve voter engagement by delivering personalized information about candidates and policies based on voter preferences. This can help voters to make a more informed decision, increasing voter turnout and reducing political apathy. AI-driven tools can also provide potentially less biased information, helping voters cut through biased news sources. We can also see improved accessibility. AI can help improve election accessibility, especially for those with disabilities or those in remote areas. Tools like voice assistants, translation software, and text-to-speak technologies can help voters better understand the voting process or political content, ensuring that more people can participate in elections. And we also see data-driven decision-making. AI can be used to detect voter fraud or irregularities by analyzing patterns in voting data. This can ensure that elections are more secure and fair. Machine learning algorithms can help election officials monitor voter rolls, track suspicious behavior, and flag discrepancies that need investigation. There are also negative impacts on election fairness that we need to be aware of. First of all, micro-targeting and voter manipulation. AI-powered micro-targeting can be used to influence voter behavior by delivering highly personalized and manipulative content. By leveraging personal data, campaigns can tailor political messages to manipulate voter emotions, sometimes spreading misleading information or exploiting psychological weaknesses, as was controversially alleged in the 2016 US election with Cambridge Analytica. This can distort voter perceptions and skew election outcomes. Next, we can have deepfakes and misinformation. AI-generated deepfake videos and content can be used to spread false information about candidates or political events. This misinformation can mislead voters, undermine trust in democratic processes, and potentially influence election outcomes unfairly. AI-generated content is increasingly sophisticated, making it harder for voters to distinguish between real and fake information. We also have algorithmic bias. AI algorithms can inherit biases present in the data they're trained on. In an election setting, biased AI tools could prioritize certain voter groups or suppress the visibility of others, contributing to unfair outcomes. For example, if an AI platform shows political ads predominantly to certain demographic groups and ignoring others, it may lead to unequal representation or disenfranchisement. And lastly, we can see echo chambers and polarization. AI-powered recommendation systems, such as those used by social media platforms, can reinforce political echo chambers by suggesting content aligned with the user's existing beliefs. This can increase polarization and limit exposure to diverse viewpoints, skewing public discourse and ultimately influencing election outcomes by entrenching extreme positions. So how has AI been used? I have 4 key case studies from the past how AI has been used effectively. Firstly, we're going to start with Barack Obama's 2012 presidential campaign, which highlighted and prioritized data analytics and micro-targeting. The Obama campaign in 2012 used AI and data analytics extensively to understand voter behavior and preferences. They built a sophisticated data platform that integrated information from various sources, including social media, voter rolls, and consumer databases. This allowed them to micro-target voters with personalized messages and optimize resource allocation for canvassing, phone banking, and get-out-the-vote efforts. The campaign's AI-driven approach to targeting swing voters and undecided voters significantly contributed to their success. However, this led to certain social damages. Data privacy concerns emerged. The campaign's extensive use of data analytics raised questions about voter privacy. The aggregation of data from various sources, including social media and consumer databases, often occurred without explicit voter consent. This intrusion into personal data sets set a precedent for future campaigns to prioritize data collection over privacy considerations. And we also have manipulation of voter behavior. By micro-targeting voters with personalized messages, the campaign potentially manipulated voter behavior to catering to individual biases and preferences, potentially exacerbating political polarization. Next, we have Donald Trump's 2016 presidential campaign. The Trump campaign in 2016 employed Cambridge Analytica, a data analytics firm that uses AI to analyze large data sets from social media and other sources. They developed psychographic profiles of voters to tailor campaign messages to individual psychological traits and preferences. By targeting voters with highly personalized ads on platforms like Facebook, the campaign was able to influence voter behavior and turnout in key swing states. This use of AI-driven psychographic profiling played a crucial role in Trump's victory. This led to significant social damage. Psychographic profiling and manipulation to tailor messages based on psychological profiles led to highly personalized and manipulative advertising. This approach exploited voters' psychological vulnerabilities, influencing their voting decisions in a way that may not have been fully transparent to them. We also saw an erosion of trust. The scandal surrounding Cambridge Analytica and the misuse of Facebook data severely eroded public trust in both political processes and tech companies. This contributed to a broader skepticism about the integrity of elections and the ethical use of personal data. And lastly, we saw increased polarization. The targeted messaging strategy may have deepened societal divisions by reinforcing existing biases and spreading misinformation to certain groups. To bring a bit of an international flair, we'll talk about Emmanuel Macron's 2017 French presidential campaign. This specialized and focused on machine learning for voter outreach and engagement. Macron's campaign used AI and machine learning algorithms to analyze voter data and predict voter behavior. The campaign team developed a platform called Nation Builder, which integrated various data sources to create detailed voter profiles. This enabled them to send personalized messages, emails, and social media posts to potential supporters. The AI-driven approach helped Macron's team identify and mobilize undecided voters, which was crucial in his victory in a highly competitive election cycle. However, this also led to different social damages. This rose, similar to Obama's campaign, arose privacy and consent issues. The use of AI to create detailed voter profiles raised privacy concerns, as many voters were unaware of the extent to which their data was being used to influence political preferences. We also saw trust in the democratic processes erode. The reliance on AI and machine learning to predict and influence voter behavior may have undermined public trust in fairness and transparency of the electoral process, and voters may feel manipulated by unforeseen forces, leading to disillusionment within democratic institutions. We also saw a deepening of the digital divide. The sophisticated use of AI and data analytics can exacerbate the digital divide, where campaigns with more resources and technological expertise can gain an unfair advantage, potentially marginalizing smaller parties and independent candidates. And in Joe Biden's 2020 campaign, AI was used effectively for voter targeting, digital advertising, and sentiment analysis, contributing to a successful and data-driven strategy. However, the use of AI also brings with it significant risks, including the manipulation of voter behavior, privacy concerns as we've discussed, and potential disenfranchisement of certain groups. So now that we've discussed all of the different ways that it's been used and how we can use it, let's go ahead and hit on key dangers of use. Potential societal damage is truly an issue here. Firstly, we have manipulation through micro-targeting. AI-enabled micro-targeting allows campaigns to send those highly personalized messages that may manipulate voter opinions. This can lead to a situation where voters receive only the information that reinforces existing beliefs, creating epistemic bubbles or echo chambers. This selective exposure to political content can distort reality and polarize the electorate, making it harder for voters to access balanced or diverse viewpoints. Next, we can see a spread of misinformation. The widespread use of AI in political campaigns can contribute to the amplification of misleading or false content. AI algorithms that prioritize engagement may inadvertently promote divisive or false information, especially when used by third-party actors, bots, or disinformation campaigns. This can erode public trust in political institutions and elections, contributing to political instability. Next, we see voter privacy and data exploitation as a danger. The heavy reliance on AI for voter profiling and micro-targeting raises significant concerns about data privacy. AI tools require vast amounts of personal data, such as browsing behavior, social media activity, and personal demographics, raising questions about how much data campaigns collect and how it is used. Without clear regulations, voter data can be exploited in many ways that infringe on individuals' privacy rights, with long-term consequences for how personal information is handled in political contexts. We can see undermining public trust in democracy, where AI-driven tools can be used to create deepfake videos or misleading content that appears authentic but is designed to deceive. The potential for AI misuse in the future raises concerns about the integrity of elections. Deepfakes and AI-generated content can confuse voters, spread disinformation, and ultimately undermine public trust in the democratic processes if they are not properly regulated. And lastly, we may see disenfranchisement of certain voter groups. AI-based campaign strategies may unintentionally marginalize or exclude certain voter groups. For example, if AI algorithms prioritize voters based on certain demographic or behavioral data, groups that don't fit into these categories may receive less outreach or attention. This could result in political disengagement and disenfranchisement for those who are not seen as key targets by an AI system, leading to a lack of representation for specific communities. The ethical use of AI in political campaigns requires careful oversight, regulation, and transparency to ensure that the benefits do not come at the cost of democracy or social cohesion. So what should we do here? One of the big things that we're raising is there are positives, there are negatives. This is a complex and thorny issue. How do we move forward? I actually hold that there are 5 key ethical considerations when we think about integrating AI into campaigns. The use of AI in political campaigns brings significant risks, including the manipulation of voter behavior, spread of misinformation, and potential disenfranchisement, as we discussed. And the ethical use of AI in political campaigns requires, again, careful oversight, regulation, and transparency. So we ought to hit on regulatory compliance. The use of AI often involves analyzing large data sets, which can include personal information, and compliance with data privacy laws, such as the General Data Protection Regulation in the EU, or the California Consumer Privacy Act in the United States, is crucial. These regulations govern how personal data can be collected, stored, and used. We also ought to consider transparency and accountability. Policymaking processes, especially in the public sector, are expected to be transparent and accountable. The use of AI should not undermine these principles. Any AI tools used in policy creation should be transparent in how they are used to influence decision-making processes, and there should be clear accountability for the outcomes. There also ought to be a consideration for bias and fairness. AI systems can inadvertently perpetuate or amplify existing biases present in the data they're trained on. This can lead to unfair or discriminatory policy recommendations, and ensuring that AI systems are designed and implemented in a way that promotes fairness and equity is essential. We ought to have human oversight. While AI can assist in policy creation by providing data-driven insights and recommendations, human oversight is critical. Policymakers should make final decisions, considering ethical implications and broader social impacts that AI may not fully capture. And lastly, we should prioritize legitimacy and trust. The legitimacy of policies created with the assistance of AI can be questioned if the public perceives that AI is making decisions without adequate human involvement. Maintaining public trust requires transparency about how AI is used and ensuring that AI complements rather than reinforces and replaces human judgment. In short, we should not discount the role AI has both played and has to play in our democratic processes and elections, nor should we ignore how influential these systems are in our policy crafting and implementation. AI stands to help engage all voters and even do so equitably, yet how we utilize it will determine if we are ethical in our voter engagement practices. Thank you very much.
All right, so we have about 25 minutes for some Q&A. Somebody's already got a question up in the back, so I won't start. I'll let her.
Great, Emily. So I have 2 related questions. First, third question. So what do you mean by how can we integrate AI? So do you just mean how can we do it quickly, how can we do it in a way that achieves the good, or how can we do it permissibly, and so on. And then regarding this question of permissibility, how would you like to see AI use in campaigning regulated? What is a permissible use, and then what kind of oversight do you want to see?
Those are great questions. Firstly, thank you for the philosophical question of how. No, it's great. So within this presentation, I more so mean how can we integrate quickly? I'm not thinking about what terms of permissibility are. With regards to regulation, I think that AI ought to be regulated, like London and Danks say, through the same categories as we regulate pharmaceuticals, so that way it's a live and active integrated process. And it's not up to me to say which branch of government would monitor this particular use of AI. I'm not quite clear yet. I've been investigating that. But I do think I think London and Danks do a nice job of outlining in what ways we ought to be regulating artificial intelligence in general. So, thank you. Yes.
Okay, so I really love this talk.
Great.
But one thing that I was wondering about is social damages. So since we've been talking, I have a 608 phone number, which is Wisconsin, a battleground state, and I've actually been texted by both Donald Trump Jr. and Michelle Obama while I've been sitting here. And so what I'm wondering is, because obviously I'm a demographic that they're aiming for, they think I live in a battleground state, I'm getting besieged by this. So one thing it could do is manipulate me. Another thing it could do is actually force me to disengage, because now I'm ignoring this broad swath of all of that sort of thing. I mean, so I'm wondering, one, there's going to be this sort of arms race between how we deal with this barrage of manipulation. And I'm kind of wondering what the next step of their attempt to manipulate my vote will be. And then another question I'm wondering, well, actually, I'll just go with that question. Do you have any thoughts on what that next step will be because I imagine political cynicism is happening, and it's been happening for years, and now I'm not going to engage in all these texts, so what are they going to do next to get me to pay attention?
I am personally very concerned about the use of PSYOPs. I think that is your next stage, is creating hyper-personalized messaging that manipulates personal relationships in a way that might not be necessarily legal or ethical in any way. But I do think that PSYOPs is the next step. And so I agree. I'm also living in a battleground state and get text messages and phone calls every day. And it is absolutely exhausting. But I think you're right. What's ending up happening here is because there's no adequate regulation, because there's no adequate policing, or I wouldn't say policing, but attention being paid to how these systems are being utilized, we're seeing a larger drive into either radicalization or apathy. And so, yeah, that would be my response.
Okay, my next question, I'm going to kind of go ahead and put it
Please.
out there. Odd implies can, and I'm a little concerned that we maybe ought to do regulatory compliance, but you did a wonderful job showing how both sides have been using AI and machine learning throughout this time. And I can't imagine either side giving it up. So how could we possibly require this as an ethical consideration, given that it seems nigh impossible to actually get both sides to agree to stop using it?
This is going to be very cynical. A paperclip bill. I realize that that's dissatisfying, but I really do think that having it be a paperclip to something much broader with regards to monitoring and the upholding of regulation within AI, perhaps under a bill for autonomous vehicle systems, might actually be really helpful here, because the concerns within both are public trust as well as public safety. And so I think that it might be possible to get it pigeonholed that way.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Yes.
So I'm trying to figure out how AI is different than other new technologies. whenever there's been new technologies, there's been a lot of hyperbolic discussion about how they're gonna change our democracy, how they're gonna change the democratic process. That happened when newspapers came around, that happened when radio came around, that happened when television came around. We've been micro-targeting for decades now. We've been, ever since we've had computers, we've been building mass databases and using that to target specific voters for engagement, right? So you don't need AI for any of that stuff. AI makes a lot of it much more efficient, there's no question. But how is AI not simply a better tool for doing what we're already doing? And hence something we should think about uniquely as regulators. And that's my question. And one way I'm thinking about this is Harari's new book says AI is unlike other types of communication technologies in that it's not a tool, it's an agent. It can be an agent. So if it's just a tool, that's fine. It's like other types of communication, makes things more efficient than we're already doing. If it's an agent, if it's something we're not doing as human beings, that's where you need to start regulating. So I'm wondering when that happens in the campaign process.
So I'm actually going to push back and say AI is not an agent because it does not have full agency. For AI to be an agent, it needs a significant degree of self-motivation and determination. It does not have that. This is a very philosophical way to determine agency, I understand. But what makes AI novel and what makes AI unique in its use and what is determining our future is the fact that one, it is autonomous rather than automated. Like I was discussing, it's no longer a set it and forget it. It can react in novel ways to novel situations and navigate a noisy environment, which makes it incredibly unique as a tool because it no longer is going to be stopped by a wall. It can figure out how to navigate around that wall, given enough data and given enough training time. And another component that makes AI incredibly different from previous tool iteration is that it can comb through all of the data and create correlations that are unknown previously. Whereas other technologies rely on our ability to make those connections between one form of data and another and make those correlations and causal relationships apparent. We no longer have to do that in the same way. We can actually have novel causal relationships pop up because new bins of information are being seen as associated where we might not have ever seen those associations. And so that makes it very different from previous technologies. So the driving forces behind what we might be doing for those micro-targeted information paths are going to be different because of those causal relationships that will be identified.
But hasn't all social science done that? I mean, when we started conducting mass public surveys of public attitudes, we created all sorts of new connections we never knew existed before. I mean, it seems to me that in that sense, it's a more efficient tool, but it's a similar tool to other tools we've employed.
Oh, absolutely, it is similar for sure. But I'm trying to articulate what makes it novel. But to be absolutely just to what you're saying, yes, it is similar. AI is a human-created tool. It's very important to remember that. It's not something as a runaway train as it's being portrayed to be. It is something that we have created that we, as I was saying earlier, train through our curation of the data, train through our actions, and train through our ability to be able to engage with it. And certain AIs can definitely seem like they are runaway tools and runaway trains, but it ultimately comes down to how are we training it, in what ways are we training it, what data are we feeding it, are we attempting to mitigate those biases, and are we attempting to bias something appropriately? Yes?
So this talk of how to regulate this has me thinking, and I'm not an Americanist, so bear with me, but I kind of view this as the same way as like data privacy regulation. So do you think the federal level is the proper level to regulate this at? And if it is at the state versus federal level, can you talk about what you believe the implications of one versus the other would be?
I think if it's going to be at a federal level, it'll probably be a weaker regulation.
Yeah.
I think that at the state level, we stand to have a stronger impact before we have a codified federal regulatory system. And that was part of the reason that I brought up the GDPR versus the California Act. And I think that certain states are going to be much more aware. But what I am concerned about is furthering the technological divide between states with have and have not, states that have increasing brain drain and states that do not. Because what's happening here is there are technological components that not everyone understands, and they are needed to be understood to regulate these systems effectively. And to have efficacious policy, you need policy advisors that are going to be able to talk about these things well. And so for states who don't necessarily have those resources, I would say that we need something on a federal level to be able to have just a baseline of protection.
That makes sense, thank you.
Yes.
So now you're me thinking, since the federal regulations are probably pretty weak, so I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on whether industry could come up with like strong industry standards that would regulate like what's going to be like acceptable among your fellow creators of intellectual property and
So IEEE does a great job of helping set industry standards, and I would say that IEEE can definitely have a great hand in this. But ultimately what it comes down to is how much are we going to trust someone who's already making a profit to do internal self-regulation and not create regulatory capture of a system?
well, I guess part of what I'm wondering is that then, okay, you don't follow IEEE standards, then every other person who's, assuming people are decent humans, and you math that, that's fine. What if everybody said, look, we're just not gonna use this tool because it doesn't follow the standard, and so, we're gonna set it aside, but we will use and buy and put to work the technologies that follow those standards.
And that's the difference here between trust and reliance on a tool, right? Making something trustworthy versus having just overt reliance and being able to scrap it for the next thing that comes down the line. I do believe that having an industry gold standard would be incredibly beneficial. And I think that that's true about all autonomous technologies at this stage. Currently, we have a lot of people who already work within industry, like Helen Gould, for example, who really try to push for internalized regulation and autonomous function. Unfortunately, what's happening there is we get conflicting industry standards from behemoths, and there's not much conversation because of concerns for IP. And so, because of those privacy concerns for intellectual property rights, we don't see as much cohesive conversation and collaboration.
Thank you,
Absolutely. Yes?
Earlier you mentioned that AI tools contributed significantly to Trump's victory back in 2016. So my question then would be how that level of significance is measured, or how can it be measured? And more specifically asking about scientific methods to measure the share of AI tools in someone's victory.
So, there is a way to measure how many people were affected by the PSYOPs campaign, because we can actually go through and see what tools were being deployed on different people's social media profiles. And so that was actually something that has been done and has been attributed to the victory of Donald Trump in 2016. Unfortunately, part of the reason that I said earlier is that it was a controversial conversation is because being able to gauge whether or not that actually had full success in voter outturn or voting profile creation to actual voting practices is very difficult to do. And so I don't necessarily have the tools or know of the tools that would be able to go from point A to point B. Thank you. Yes, sir.
A narrow question. The vice presidential debate, it had a wonderful moment where Vance got terribly upset by being called a liar by the moderators. My question is simply, if it were possible, could it be possible to have an AI mechanism that automatically tag every time a debater was dubious?
Yes.
Lying.
Yes.
It could be used, it could have been used there.
Yeah, there are definitely different tools that can be used to be able to, if you have a database of all of the public statements from that particular opponent, then what you could do is you could run it through as soon as it's said to be able to do a cross-benefit analysis and check and see. This tool doesn't, as far as I know, exist, and it would be very difficult to create, but it is potential.
And at this point, there's no use of such or effort to create such a tool. It just strikes me as potentially useful.
So, not that I'm aware of. I am trying to follow as much as I can, but unfortunately there's just so much out there that is being created and generated by third-party apps and third-party content generators that following everything can be very daunting to begin with. But insofar as I know from the larger leaders, like Cambridge Analytica, all these other groups, I have not heard of something like this.
Thanks.
You might want to register it.
I'm just being sad it's not being done.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Dr. LaRosa. I have one question specifically on the moving forward is you mentioned previously is on the AI, which is all about those abilities. And when AI first came out, like a lot of voters, like basically everyone is talking about how AI is going to have an impact on elections. But turned out that like a couple months ago, when Trump arguing that in Vice President Harris' campaign, those probably are generated by AI, we just find out that this is not true. Like humans all of a sudden are just outsmart AI. But it's all about the ability that how much AI can do. And I love your pushbacks on the argument saying that AI right now is not fully an agent yet, it's just like a tool still used by humans. But as an electrical engineering and neuroscience student, I get taught by AI every single day. We're also working about AI, like generate codes, get rid of those jobs. But as we're seeing the ability of AI continue to grow, it's getting stronger and stronger. Right now we're only seeing those narrow AIs like self-automated cars, generative AI, chatbots. Those are pretty narrow models that we designed those algorithms were targeted to solve specific algorithms. But a couple of years later, we might see those artificial general intelligence (AGIs) that they're having a comparable level to humans. Maybe not reaching the ASI, artificial super intelligence yet, make them like fully agent. What even Elon Musk was asked when answering a question to the reporter. He asked the reporter, what type of AI would you saying that will win the election in 2032? The future is so transforming, and that just show us like how AI could continue to get stronger. Okay. And when AI someday could become, and when AGI could get implanted or AI is stronger, that in a comparable level to human, what do you think like the role of governments or how like as voters or students, how can we be prepared for any step we should take in like ahead of time to make sure that we're still valuing that we can still outsmart AI and we can still distinguish something that's good, something is bad, or something is true, something is not. Because like fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, then we're all having some issues.
You're hitting on a massive concern and an absolute fear that people have surrounding these technologies. Is AGI going to be smarter than me, and is there a possibility that it will be able to continually outsmart me? One of the things that I would say is AGI is not here yet, and it's not going to be here for a long time. And what I actually push for in my work is that AI should be tailored to be able to be working collaboratively with humans rather than supplanting them. And I think that in order to mitigate the concerns that you're talking about, instead of thinking about, well, what do I do when these systems come out, is more to think about at the level of you're at, what do I do to design systems that will actually be beneficial for the future of the rest of us? I work a lot on the ethics of AI in development and deployment, as well as the transparency surrounding the use of the system, because as you know, the black box, white box dichotomy is real. And what I push for in particular is we need to make systems that are going to not necessarily disrupt, but augment healthfully the rest of how we operate, because no one wants to be replaced, right? And so I think that that's the next step. I think that's how we're going to help mitigate those concerns, is by you designing these systems and by creating something that is healthful for the rest of the community, not just helpful. So, yeah, thank you.
We have time for one more.
Oh,
I've already asked one, so.
Yeah, he's greedy. You better get Bill in then.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, you got.
Yeah, we've got conflicting. Last one.
We might have a chance for two more. See how fast you are. We'll see.
Going into future election cycles, how do you think that the younger generation of voters, like growing up with AI and social media, is having more experience with it as they've grown up with social media, specifically college-age voters, will change how elections are going forward with AI? You know, AI is going to develop too, compared to this election or with the older generations who didn't grow up with social media and seeing AI implemented in it every day.
Oh, it's with any technology that's been developed, right? Any novel technology or newer technology that's been developed, you have the offset of people who are older or who didn't necessarily, as you say, grow up with this technology, being pushed out and not being comfortable or accepting of the technology. I mean, the umbrella, for example, when it was a new technology, had a whole bevy of editorial letters being sent into the London Gazette saying that it was un-English to not have the wrath of God rained on you. And so, you know, as any technology starts to develop and we start to internalize it as a norm, we start to understand it a little better, and we're also less swayed by the concerns. And so I think that we're going to see an uptick of savvy voters who are not going to respond to those texts or phone calls, who are not going to necessarily engage in the same way as we may have seen from older voters. So, and Bill, I'm sorry, did you want to?
You got time for one more.
I'm just wondering, what was wrong with the Mark Robinson ad? If it's his own words.
So according to the law, nothing. According to the law, there's nothing because it's not libel, which is really interesting.
I mean, they were quoting someone, a journalism professor
Who said it was ethically dubious, and yeah, I actually push back and say, ethically, there's not anything wrong to have somebody's words used against them because, well, not used against them, but parroted in a reflective way, because I think that it was accurate. But I do think that in a broader schema, this person may have been speaking about how ethically the use of deep faking is in itself an unethical practice. Because when you use it at all, if you can justify it in one direction, it's a slippery slope to justify it in another. And so I think that the use of deep faking itself is actually very problematic.
Is it fake? If it's his own words?
We can talk over.
That sounds like something you talk over beer.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Well, thank you, everyone.
Well, our time's up. Remember, we have another event on Thursday. We have Scott Lemieux from the University of Washington talking about the role of the Supreme Court in the upcoming election and afterwards. And now, join me in thanking Emily LaRosa.